Is the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, today we're likely to see bipartisan support for an amendment to authorize the Secretaries of Defense and State to provide limited assistance to properly vetted factions within the Syrian opposition as part of the broader effort to, quote, degrade and ultimately destroy the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. The President specifically asked Congress to provide these authorities, and I somewhat reluctantly will agree to support it. But I want to add a caution that this action should not be interpreted as granting congressional authorization for the broader use of military force to combat the growing threat posed by ISIL. Quite the contrary. The amendment specifically prohibits the introduction of U.S. armed forces into hostilities absent such explicit authorization. Now, the President asserts he already has the authority to confront ISIL. In his most recent notifications to Congress, he cites the executive's constitutional authority to conduct U.S. foreign relations and as Commander-in-Chief. While this issue has been the subject of long simmering debate between our branches and among historians and scholars, I would modestly note that the Constitution explicitly grants to Congress and only to Congress the power to declare war. If there are inherent unenumerated powers in the role of Commander-in-Chief, most surely logic dictates there are similar inherent unenumerated powers Congress is vested in with our role to declare war. Let's make no mistake. We are confronting here on this issue a matter of war and peace. Yet in the same breath, we're discussing the danger we're preparing to shutter Congress for another 7 weeks until after the election. The President said he welcomes congressional support for this effort to show the world we are united in confrontation with this danger. I'm glad he welcomes congressional input. But I, for one, believe the President actually needs specific congressional authority, whether he wants it or not, for what he himself acknowledges will be a prolonged campaign to eradicate the cancer like ISIL. Anything short of that is an abrogation of our sworn duty to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States. This isn't President Obama trampling on the Constitution. This is Congress in a long 60-year history of winking and blinking about our responsibility because we don't want to bear it. But on matters of war and peace, we either live up to our constitutional responsibility, which is quite clear, or we go in a 7-week recess. My colleagues know there are historical cases in which congressional acquiescence has been construed to confer support or authorization where none has been given. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution is certainly a case in point. It led to a prolonged war and 55,000 U.S. deaths. The 93rd Congress adopted the War Powers Resolution to reassert Congress's role after both Korea and Vietnam. The War Powers Resolution requires the President to consult with Congress prior to introducing American forces into hostilities. The administration has recently argued that the aerial strikes do not constitute hostilities because they don't involve sustained fighting. But out of the President's own words, he said last week this would be, quote, a comprehensive and sustained effort. That doesn't sound like a temporary action by the Commander-in-Chief. And to put an even finer point on the issue, I remind my colleagues of House Concurrent Resolution 105, which was adopted in July, that prohibits the President from deploying or maintaining U.S. armed forces in a sustained combat role in Iraq without specific statutory authorization. I agree with the President when he said we are strongest as a nation when the President and Congress work together. On the most important issue we ever vote on, war and peace, we must come together and this branch must live up to its constitutional responsibility at long last. I thank the Speaker, and I yield back.